It's an experience that I think every American should have. It will change you. When Ben Rhodes told me before I went to Cuba that I was going to be very sad, he was somewhat right. I landed and I could not believe how beautiful this island was. I could not believe how beautiful the people were. That was my first reaction. I was like, wow, I'm not a big nature guy, but this is one of the coolest places I've ever been to in my life. And then it was an emotional roller coaster. It turned into deep sadness. You know, you arrive in Havana and you start seeing the trash that can't be collected because there's not enough oil and gas. There's not enough oil to operate the trash trucks. And then you're like, it's fucked up. It's fucked up what we've done. You see the houses that are dilapidated, people living in them. It looks like, you know, they were bombed out. The outside looks so pretty, but the paint is chipping. Part of that is obviously the salt water that destroys the paint. It requires a tremendous amount of upkeep that this unfortunately poor island does not have, right? You get a little surprised too. The expectation is all the cars are going to be from the 50s. That's not the case. There's new vehicles in Cuba, and there's also still vehicles driving around. I mean, it's very limited. It's very limited in comparison to like what the normal traffic would look like on the island, from what I understand from people that have been there prior, right? There's a tremendous amount. I mean, there's a queue system that the government has implemented. There is obviously a lot of not hoarding necessarily, but like stockpiling of the strategic reserves so they can just like hopefully continue surviving to the best of their ability, right? And then after that sadness goes away, you get angry because you start thinking about why these are the conditions that regular Cubans are subjected to. And you realize like, we fucking did this. And we're still doing this. And so many fucking Americans are oblivious, or the ones who at least know what's going on in Cuba defend it and repeat lies. It's unbelievable, dude. And then, you know, then anger never really goes away. There's a lot of things I want to discuss, obviously. That was a short trip. This was planned, or was it cut short? No, it was planned. It was going to be a short trip. And I think the timing of that was actually pretty crazy, considering that like I got back in literally the day before ICE was sent to every international and local airport, basically, in the United States of America. So like, you know, there is that element of it as well. But regardless, that was, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'll get into that in a second. You have a lot of Israeli agents on your Twitter. I know. I dodged many bullets, many bullets. But folks, we're live. We're alive. Personal news-wise, obviously, like the personal news that I'm going to be delivering to you in between the time period where I press the stop streaming button and press the start streaming button. So help me God, that's what I'm gonna do. Is mostly related to the trip. So I'm probably gonna start there. And the Twitter is broken because the trip discourse is insane. Yeah, Twitter's always insane. Obviously, we'll get into all of that. I'll go through like some of the misinfo in general because there's a lot of it out there. It's actually unbelievable how bad it is. One of the things I'll say is this. Before we get into situation monitoring and the like, I think a lot of people just simply don't do things. So when they see someone doing things, it triggers something in their minds where they go, well, I'm not doing anything. And that makes me feel somewhat like maybe a little immoral that I'm not doing anything. So I have to find a way to disparage people who are trying to do their best. Right. And I think that's a lot of like the anger and resentment, even from like a totally non-ideological standpoint, comes from precisely that. Because like there are a lot of liberals who obviously want to fancy themselves, want to see themselves as like kind-hearted humanitarian people. So when they see like someone actually engaging in that act, someone that they don't like, they don't go, you know what, I'll hand it to them. These guys are doing this thing. It's fine. I don't really normally like this person, but it's fine. They go, let me find a reason as to why this is cynical, right? This has got to be cynical. I think that's part of it. There's this like insecurity that's triggered in people that make them behave in this like very strange way. Um, I don't understand it at all. I can't, like, I've never been that way at all. When I see someone who I oppose, when I see someone who's like maybe not the best person do something that like is surprisingly on in line with my worldview, I don't immediately go, fuck this guy, I'm gonna find a way to like disparage it or whatever. I'll openly say that I like it, right? I'll straight up say like, oh no, this is a good thing, or like I'll even recognize my own personal jealousy when someone gets to do something that I wanted to do, even if I don't agree with their worldview, even if I think they're cynical, even if I think they're grifters. Like one of the examples I give you is like Jackson Hinkle, right? Not the biggest fan of him, but I think it was fucking beast mode that he got to speak in Sanaa in front of, you know, tens of thousands of Yemeni people, right? Like that's objectively a cool thing that he did, right? Like that's something that I wish I could do. I'm not going to sit here and be like, fuck him. Like fuck this guy. He's cynical. So, that is a strange, fascinating phenomena that I've seen. But it's odd. It's odd. And it's really funny because like a lot of people that I went on the trip with also for the first time recognize it because they've like heard me speak about it in the past. Like, you know, how my haters are like mentally unwell, but they straight up were like, yeah, actually this is like unfucking bearable. You know what I mean? This is like genuinely unbearable. This is like your fucking haters are insane at like trying to disparage every little thing that happens. I had no idea what this was, what things were looking like in the United States of America and how the shit was being covered in America until I got internet. And I was like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. People are just straight up lying about like, you know, people are so angry. The Cubans are so angry on the ground. The real Cubans hate these people. It's like, that's not true at all. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it was mind boggling. I have not ever seen anything like it. They'd be like, protests are mounting outside of these hotels. They're banging on the doors. Like, that's not true. Like, literally not true. Like, not even remotely close to reality. It's so strange. It was such a strange phenomena to experience, right? It was such a strange thing to experience where like what I perceived on the ground, what I perceived and what I saw in real life was entirely the opposite of what people were seeing on their timelines in the United States of America and elsewhere. Fascinating. They didn't have much internet for the last 2 days, and I couldn't check the insane narrative spin on this website. What a nightmare. How do people live like this? They just sit around and justify the U.S. government torment against smaller countries who feel powerful, the weakest-minded insects. And I will go through some of the top line, like, insanity. March literally posted this, and he was like, you know, the first couple of fucking responses were really positive, and then immediately was like a sea of negative psychopathic takes. You're the common ground, MAGA liberals and ice real shills, insane quote page. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. Like, if you look at the background, of these people, it's basically every part of the American political spectrum except for, like, I guess, I don't know. It feels like it was just like every part of the American political spectrum with the exception of, like, you know, socialists and communists. Like, it's shocking. And, you know, many normal liberals, I think, are just not tuned into this discourse at all. Because, like, normal human beings that you would have a conversation around this sort of thing with are going to be like, what are you talking about? The thing that people were complaining about, like the 5-star hotel shit, right? I found it really strange that they clipped me talking about it, and it's objectively the truth, right? That is objectively the truth. I just said literally what the American government's restrictions are, right? And people were just like, sure, buddy. And they ran with it because it's so odd. It's so fucking odd. It's like, but it's just like, you're never going to go to Cuba. So for you, it doesn't matter. The State Department And the Treasury Department specifically makes it illegal for American citizens to stay at whatever accommodations they want to stay in, with the exception of like 4 hotels. Okay. They updated the talking point that the hotel you stayed at was on a ban list. Yeah, I know. A YouTuber used that clip to say you were lying, but when they looked up the actual law, they said you were telling the truth, but you were obfuscating some facts. No, I wasn't. What a lot of people I think don't understand is that this Progressive International, Code Pink, like this entire flotilla convoy of aid by air and by water was put together obviously with allowances from the Cuban government and also with allowances from the American government, because you can't do a massive 600-person humanitarian aid mission without getting the go-ahead from the Cuban government and without getting the go-ahead from the American government. Like I have the paperwork right here. I have the OFAC restrictions paperwork that I had to sign right in my hands, okay? I signed a piece of documentation in order to, as an American citizen, I had to get a travel affidavit, a general specific licenses travel affidavit, okay? Wait, the U.S. approved that aid mission? Yeah, of course. Of course the United States approved that aid mission. The United States Treasury Department has to approve anyone that's going to Cuba. A lot of people don't realize this, okay? Especially if you're doing any sort of aid, any sort of humanitarian aid. There are levels to the cruelty that America is willing to subject the Cubans to. But the reality is that the number one telltale sign for international human rights organizations is the restriction of humanitarian aid. So the American government, at least for now, has not restricted humanitarian aid, but humanitarian aid alone is not going to be able to make up for the lack of imports and lack of exports anyway, and we can't fucking send, barrels of oil regardless, so like we can't actually address the number one problem that Cubans are facing. But yeah, every single part of this trip was directly sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury, and a lot of people don't understand that. Right? And except for this guy, who, ironically enough, in an effort to shit on me, accidentally showed the truth. Hey, by the way, Hasan just broke U.S. law. Oh, and he could face a $250,000 fine and up to 10 years in prison once he gets back to the States. Hey, FBI, get on it. 30,000 likes. The U.S. Department of State maintains a Cuba prohibited accommodations list, which bans American travelers from staying at or paying for over 400 government-owned hotels, guest houses, and resorts. Now, isn't that fucking fascinating? Tip-to-tip reaction, brother. I'm lasering you into the fucking night sky like a shooting star if you think I'm going to be talking about the tip-to-tip, here, I'll unban you. I'll give you a week off. You please, dude. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. There's so much shit going on, and I have to literally cover it. And you're out here being like, have you watched Tip to Tip? Are you fucking delusional? Live on the same planet as us, please. Oh my God. I said, yeah, the U.S. law is fucking stupid. I didn't break it, but this post is the only one that ironically acknowledges the comical U.S. restrictions on what U.S. citizens are allowed to do in Cuba. The 5-star hotel is only one of the few hotels the U.S. government allows Americans to legally stay in. And it's crazy because, like, why the fuck should the American government regulate what American citizens want to do in another country? But that exists. Okay? Isn't that fucking nuts? That's insane. It's the truth. And what blows my mind about this, I was first going to suggest you stay at a Casa Particular, but if you are there with a group, it would only make sense. Yeah, there's 600 people. The island is experiencing a total blackout. It's virtually impossible for 600 people to be coordinated in 600 different houses, or like however many different houses. There's not that many Casa Particulars anyway. Casa Particular is basically like an Airbnb system for regular Cubans to be able to open up their homes to American citizens that are coming in. Some of them are allowed. It's in the list of housing that you can stay at. Okay. And it's awesome. It's dope. When I go back to Cuba, I will absolutely do that, because I'm not going to be going with like a massive humanitarian aid mission. I didn't choose where we're staying, right? But But if you're there with a whole group, it only makes sense. The hotel is the same place. I went through this whole thought process within seconds. It's weird that people wrote articles about it. Also, that hotel wasn't that fancy. I went there. Yeah, it's not a very fancy hotel, but it doesn't matter. It's fucking Cuba. It's a very poor country. It's been kept poor by the United States of America. And what's ironic about this restrictive process is that these are privately owned hotels. So when people are talking about like the electricity grid and what the hotels are doing, they have generators. Okay. Not only do they have generators, but they're literally taking up some of the fucking necessary resources through private commerce. And it's ironic that that unjust system is precisely what the Americans want to fucking bring about to the fucking island. So the people that are literally criticizing claiming that the blockade doesn't exist don't know what the restrictions look like. Number one. Number two, they're literally fucking complaining that like these hotels are they have their own generators and they are able to keep the lights on. Yeah, because they're fucking privately owned. That is the fucking problem. That's what America wants. America's literally saying they will only allow oil into the fucking island for companies like that, okay? For privately owned hotels like that. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That's like what we're trying to fucking address. Now they're spreading a lie that you guys were literally throwing food at Cubans. Have you seen this? Yes, I saw that too. It's so cynical. And in the process, they're basically admitting that I'm right. But it doesn't matter because it's just like, it's just pure anger. Why does this trip cause so much outrage? I'm stupid. It's even worse than China. I think it's because it's partially because of the fact that like there is a State Department need here, because the goal here is obviously to bring awareness to the blockade. And the American government spent 60 fucking years saying it's not the blockade. The blockade doesn't exist, while simultaneously enforcing it to use that weird invisibility of the blockade, the system of bureaucracy that's implemented, to say it's actually the Cuban government's fault. It's actually communism's fault. That's kind of the point. And I will be addressing this in the mini doc that we put together. Austin Ox is working on it right now. I basically landed in Cuba and spent every moment that I had. I didn't participate in a lot of the stuff and any of the stuff really that the Progressive International was doing, which is why it's also like additionally funny. While they're on the one hand, they're lying about like the events that took place. On the other hand, they keep saying I was, a principal participant of these events that took place. I wasn't. I was actually hanging out. I didn't do anything with Progressive International, even though I love those guys and they did fantastic work out there. Because I locked in with Belly of the Beast, the independent news outlet in Cuba, one that I really, really leaned into. I mean, they're fucking incredible. They do incredible work. Shouts out to Belly of the Beast. I will forever ride for them. Okay, they give me a little mug too. But basically, I spent every moment just conducting interviews, like talking to regular Cubans, talking to people that are doing incredible work, and investigating like how this complex system of restrictions has actually harmed Cuban production every step of the way. That was my goal, because I had talked to a lot of people ahead of time of this trip. Some people who legitimately said things like, Hasan, you don't understand. It's actually the Cuban government is incredibly repressive. They're very bad. They're not responsive to the needs of the people. They're hoarding antibiotics. Like, I heard so much from people who were otherwise kind people at times, and they were just deluded. And it made me think there has to be a reason for, why people are saying this stuff. Like, there has to be some truth to this, right? And it wasn't just Cubans that were saying it. There's a lot of, Americans that are even remotely well-read on the situation, have read the State Department talking points for the most part. So I wanted to figure that out. I wanted to investigate that, and that's precisely what I did. It's decades of propaganda, and it's so silly. Like, you can kind of imagine how silly it is. Especially if you go to Cuba, you very quickly understand that like almost everything that you learn about Cuba is just ridiculous. Either a great exaggeration or just an outright lie. Hasan, go to Gaza. Hasan, go to Cuba. Okay, Hasan, why did you actually go and show the truth? You need to be locked up. Also, here's a list of imperial rules designed to kill these people you're helping. Yeah, I know. It's very strange. They say I sit around and farm donations at home when I cover this stuff. And then when I go there, they say, how dare you go there? You're performative. It kind of feels like they just don't want me to go there or do anything. It just kind of feels like they just don't want me to say or do anything at all, right? Like it's more so the fact that I'm doing something that is very frustrating for them. It's just an unbelievable amount of lies have been told about this trip. And obviously because everyone that's on this trip are in Cuba and they don't have access to the internet. They had, myself included, had no way of knowing what the fuck people were saying and what kind of insane unhinged propaganda was like being slung around. Is that ADL audio real? I don't know what the ADL audio is. Reports that you died in Cuba? Yeah, I'm dead. This is pre-recorded. Anyway, I guess this is like one of the TikToks that was like in defense of what was going on.
About people coming here to Cuba to deliver humanitarian aid are very interesting to me. One of the headlines and some of the commentary that I've seen is in terms of all of the people that came here and they stayed at a 4-star hotel while the rest of Cuba was in darkness. I want to remind you all that while it's not illegal for American citizens to come here to Cuba, it is absolutely illegal for us to stay in any of these hotels that you see on this screenshot. We cannot stay at all of these listed brand hotels. We cannot stay at a mom and pop hotel. We cannot stay at anywhere that is Cuban owned in Cuba because that was instated by your United States government. And those who do stay with Cuban families, because the first time I came to Cuba in November, I stayed with a family. They actually have to take our passport numbers and register us because of our United States government. Again, it is not illegal for American citizens to travel to Cuba. However, just like the sanctions and the blockade, the United States government makes damn sure that we don't support the Cuban people. The second thing I saw was, all of these influencers spend all of this money when they just could have given it to the Cuban people. How? Do you know that because of the blockade and the sanctions, that United States citizens cannot send money?
Yes, it's crazy. People don't realize, like, all of that aid, we had to literally physically send it there. Okay, like someone had to physically put that aid in the hands of Cubans. Okay, that's another crazy part of this where people are like, oh, you don't understand. Like, why didn't they just send the aid? It's like, you're a fucking idiot. You think we didn't think about this? Not only was there like a cultural component to this humanitarian aid trip, because like there's so much Orientalization that's going on here. Like you're treating the regular Cuban citizens like they're fucking animals. It's disgusting. Like the way you're talking about it, like you think they don't experience joy. You think they don't care about art. You think they don't care about being treated like fucking human beings. It's disgusting. There's so much like speaking over regular Cubans that are living in Cuba in this conversation that is mind-boggling. It's alarming. It's gross. And I cannot believe how much both liberals and fucking right-wingers have engaged in this. Like, it's crazy to me. One of the aspects of one of the craziest pieces of misinformation was that kneecap guys like sucked up all the energy and killed Cubans in a hospital. The reason why the Cuban hospital ran out of energy is not because the fucking electricity grid is falling apart. I mean, that's part of it for sure, of course, but there's not enough gas on the island for their generators to work. That is our fault. America, we did that. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when we have starved this island of necessary resources by stopping other countries from being able to freely trade with Cuba? It's illegal for America to implement this blockade. It's legal to trade with Cuba. It's legal to import Cuban goods. It's legal to export Cuban goods. It's unfucking believable. It's unbelievable. Kneecap participated in one of the many daily festivals that happen during the day, okay? That festival that they participated in had Cuban musicians that were also participating in it. It was free for all Cubans to attend, and it was overwhelmingly Cubans that were there. It blows my fucking mind that these people can be so cynical and so gross. And then I come back and I see people on the sidelines trying to do their very best to continue justifying the asphyxiation that we have implemented on this island. The people died because you morons threw a giant party and sucked up all the electricity. These are fucking Cubans, man. These are everyday Cubans having a great time on a free concert that was thrown together. And it wasn't just kneecap. It was like, Cuban artists that were also participating in it. I say you're a fucking insanely indecent person, and you should really think hard about why you're repeating obvious moronic lies that MAGA is spamming on the timeline. Vicious scumbag. I think I cannot believe that the average person is this indecent. I think this is cynicism born out of just like being on this website. I cannot believe that people could be like this. Was reading on Dropsite that when the power goes out, the doctors in pediatric hospitals have to hand pump the ventilators for babies. Dropsite got this reporting from Belly of the Beast. Yes. That's precisely the case. I talked to a doctor, like I said in the tweet that this fucking dipshit was responding to. I talked to a doctor that told me that in our interview, when the power goes out, when the generators fail and they're mid-surgery, they just basically sew the patient back up and they go, we'll try again later. It was crazy when you mentioned NeuroSim, and then you had people argue deep in the comments how it's fake or not a real cure. Or whatever, there are a million cures. Made me so goddamn mad. Americans would rather die than admit a foreign enemy has any benefit. Exactly. They do not want to comprehend like real shit. They just, if it goes against their priors, they just go, no, that's not real. I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it. It's unbelievable. It's a lie. Never seen anything like it. Mart said, out of Cuba now, on the way home, and finally have access to the internet. I'm having a hard time putting into words the thoughts I have on my experience there the past couple of days. The level of cruelty to the oil blockade the U.S. imposed on the day-to-day lives of everyday Cubans cannot be overstated. Everyday conveniences and essential services that we take for granted are completely non-existent. Entire systems that were already dilapidated by decades of sanctions and restrictions from participating globally start to break down exponentially when you remove fuel from the equation. The innovation required to accomplish the most basic tasks is astounding. People existing at night in complete darkness of the Black House, just trying their best to lead normal lives in spite of the lack of power. Yet every Cuban person I met was extremely kind, patient, and welcoming. The resilience that the people of the island have is extremely admirable and heartbreaking to witness. Cuba is a beautiful place with amazing people and insane potential. What the U.S. has done to that island is shameful and nothing short of inhumane. It's an experience that I think every American should have. It will change you. Okay, it will change you. When Ben Rhodes told me before I went to Cuba that I was going to be very sad, he was somewhat right. I landed and I could not believe how beautiful this island was. I could not believe how beautiful the people were. That was my first reaction. I was like, wow, I'm not a big nature guy, but this is one of the coolest places I've ever been to in my life. And then it was an emotional roller coaster. It turned into deep sadness. You arrive in Havana and you start seeing the trash that can't be collected because there's not enough oil and gas. There's not enough oil to operate the trash trucks, right? And then you're like, it's fucked up. It's fucked up what we've done. You see the houses that are dilapidated, people living in them. It looks like, they were bombed out. The outside looks so pretty, but the paint is chipping. Part of that is obviously the salt water that destroys the paint, right? It requires a tremendous amount of upkeep that this unfortunately poor island does not have, right? You get a little surprised too. The expectation is all the cars are going to be from the 50s. That's not the case. There's new vehicles in Cuba, and there's also still vehicles driving around. I mean, it's very limited. It's very limited in comparison to like what the normal traffic would look like on the island, from what I understand from people that have been there prior, right? There's a tremendous amount. I mean, there's a queue system that the government has implemented. There is obviously a lot of not hoarding necessarily, but like stockpiling of the strategic reserves so they can just like hopefully continue surviving to the best of their ability, right? And then after that sadness goes away, you get angry because you start thinking about why these are the conditions that regular Cubans are subjected to. And you realize like, we fucking did this. And we're still doing this. And so many fucking Americans are oblivious, or the ones who at least know what's going on in Cuba defend it and repeat lies. It's unbelievable, dude. And then, that anger never really goes away. But, I guess that anger transfers to the way that some deeply disturbed pieces of shit and the way that they operate, and your anger basically turns into not just anger against the American government, but against the anger that you experience from people who justify this stuff. HasanAbi, blaming it all on the U.S. shifts the problem away from the fact that Cuba has systemic issues with an authoritarian government and their planned economy. Blame needs to go both ways. Yeah, no, you're a fucking delusional moron if you think that that's the case. Okay? Sorry, it's just the truth. There is literally, once you see it, it's impossible for you to unsee it. Okay? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Hasan hate is beginning to.
It's abso-fucking-lutely ridiculous. You are making shit up. Okay? There is no both sides in this equation. Okay? 60 years of fucking actively trying to undermine. Dude, you don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. When you see some of these interviews, you will fucking understand exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? I'll give you a teaser. One example, and there are millions of examples like this. I'll start with one example. I talked to a surgeon. He is a highly esteemed facial reconstruction surgeon. There's a lot of people who need jaw reconstruction because they have lung cancer or throat cancer, and this surgeon goes in and does this incredibly complex procedure where they rebuild a jaw for the patients. Okay. And, there are more old school methods in the reconstruction process. And then there are newer methods that are available. There's a 3D printer. So this guy that I interviewed, okay, I'll tell you his name. This guy that I interviewed, his name is Guillermo Sanchez. He's a jaw surgeon. We took a photo with some of his students and other doctors as well. You might have seen it. So the world-renowned expert in facial reconstruction surgery. And I was talking to him about how this stuff works. And he said that obviously they can't purchase any medical equipment that has 10% or above American components. Right? So that right off the jump is crazy because the way commerce works, the way international trade works, like there's a lot of shit that has 10% or above American components in it, right? So what these guys have to do is find alternatives, oftentimes in Germany or France, right? They make medical equipment. So he finds a German company that's willing to sell this 3D printer. It's multiple millions of dollars, right? And they get charitable contributions, charitable donations. They get the funds together and they buy this thing and they start using this 3D printer to do the facial reconstruction surgeries, to build these new jaws for these patients in Cuba. Long story short, the machine breaks. Now it's a German machine. Germany's not America. It doesn't have American components in it, but it's a very complex machine. And in order to fix it, in order to repair the machine, you need either a German engineer to come to Cuba and fix it personally, or at least like be able to teach a Cuban engineer to be able to fix it. There's proprietary tech in this, obviously, so they're not going to do that. They have to send a German engineer. So he calls up the German company and he says, "Hey, we bought this piece of equipment. Unfortunately, it's broken. We need a technician." And the German business says, "Sorry, we can't do it because we're afraid of American punishments. We cannot send a technician, nor can we send the necessary components to fix this multiple $1,000,000 piece of equipment." So now it's just sitting in a fucking room. And the impact of that is that either many of the Cuban patients that need this reconstructive surgery don't get it and they have to go back to like older methods, or if there's any sort of 3D printing that takes place, they have to go to Mexico. They have to go to their Mexican counterparts and lean into their Mexican counterparts or their Canadian counterparts in the field of medicine that are willing to take time out of their day to recreate these jaws so they can send it to Cuba, adding an unnecessary part in the process. Isn't that fucking unbelievable? That's just one story. I'm going to tell you, I talk to doctors, I talk to surgeons, I talk to nurses, I talk to neuroscientists. There is a story like this with every single person. Will your interview with Jeremy Corbyn be in the doc? Yes. We will also release the interviews individually after as well. We're just going to put some hits, some major hits from the interviews that I conducted. First, the mini doc's going to come out. Then my Cosio interview is going to come out. It was like an hour and 30 minutes, almost 2 hours that I talked to the foreign vice minister. I brought up a lot of the, talking points, and I just like rapid fired them to get him to address some of these things. But it's, we'll of course react to them as well. Do you know when the ETA for it is? Yes, Austinox is working on it. Okay, it's very, very, very. It's like 8 hours of footage basically. I spent every waking moment, pretty much every waking moment filming when I wasn't traveling around, which was very difficult to do regardless, right?